Very quiet. All right, and I'm gonna just a couple of housekeeping items. If y'all have your phones with you, if you would put them on silent. This is a directional mic, so it's gonna pick up whatever noises, hopefully our voices come from the audience. And I asked the alumni tonight I'm gonna have them introduce themselves, and I asked them one question I want them to answer to start. And then really this is a chance for you to ask all the things you're wondering. So think about what questions you have for them. And I have some to fill in if we're having a quiet moment. So I'm gonna go ahead and say your names because you know what, I'll pick the first person and then you pick the next person to introduce yourselves. How's that sound? So I'm gonna start with Baron. If you go ahead and introduce yourself, name, pronouns if you choose, what years you were here at Spring Garden. That would be lovely.
Sure. Hello, everyone. I am Baron Rogers, pronouns he and they. I went to Spring Garden in, I graduated 2002 and I was there for about 6-7 years, so 1995. This math is hurting my brain. It's a long day, but I'm so happy. Yeah, well, it's
second to grade.
Third to eighth grade. Okay, whatever the math is on that one, if someone could do that for me. Couldn't tell me.
I couldn't do that.
And yeah, I don't think was there anything else?
Oh, occupation.
Oh, I am a staff psychologist at Pennsylvania State University in the Counseling and Psychological Services. I also teach adjunct faculty for the Counseling Ed program.
Thank you. Pick somebody.
Lauren.
Hello, hi Baron. It's nice to meet you, another Spring Garden alumni. My name's Lauren Jean Griffioen. I use the pronouns she, her, hers. Let's see, I went to Spring Garden from 6th through 8th grade. I wish I had known about it earlier. Mid-5th grade when I found it, I was like, send me here now. It was still in the old Akron location, but I went to Pickle Road, as we called it, which was just a great adventure, going from old school to, I think we were getting a charter or something like that. Some kind of thing was happening in the adult world to bring us up to the next level. And let's see, so I graduated high school in 97, so subtract 4. 93 is when I graduated from 8th grade. In our 8th grade trip, we went to Gettysburg, and I work here now for the National Park Service. Although the interpretive experience back then was underwhelming, and I heard things that would not be said now by the national parks, like this was a war of Southern aggression, or this is really about states' rights. And our diverse, happy class was just like, what is going on here? But anyways, it was an interesting trip. But yeah, I'm here now working for the National Park Service at Eisenhower National Historic Site and Gettysburg National Military Park. And I've lived all over the United States working for different national parks and emergency services, but now I'm in the budget office as a budget analyst. And thanks to my advanced math learning I got at Spring Garden, where we got to go at our own pace. So I was way ahead by the time I hit high school. And a weird fact or fun fact about myself is I love my electric bike. I ride it everywhere I can. It was rainy out today, and me and my kids were both grouchy about not being able to ride to school on the e-bike, but we picked this location so we could have one car and ride our e-bikes. That's my cool fact. And I will pick, I want to hear more about April's stuff because she does really cool stuff with farmers markets, and I'm a huge fan of that. And I knew her when she was also at Pickle Road. So go ahead, April.
Hi, guys. I'm going to take up the video. I think that'll help for you to hear me. So I'm April Jones, and I do run a farmer's market located in Columbia, South Carolina. But all of my success is directly related to my fabulous experiences at Spring Garden. And so now I am a writer and a sustainable activist, and I speak at conferences, and I have a new partnership with Dillard University, which is an HBCU, historically Black college and university in beautiful New Orleans. And so we're going to really talk about climate change and ways that we can help our farmers to be more resilient and increase food sovereignty. Ian, would you like to go?
Yeah, my name is Ian. I went to Spring Garden pre-K through 8th, and I graduated in 2006. Currently, I'm a campus consultant for Plymouth State University for their study abroad office. So my title is Director of Global Engagement, and I work with study abroad students and also international students studying in the US. And fun fact is that I just finished up a program, a 2-week program in London. So I'm actually calling in from England right now. So yeah. Aubrey.
Yeah, I am Aubrey Tingler. I attended Spring Garden kindergarten through 8th grade, and I graduated from 8th grade in 2007. I am now an environmental scientist focusing on coupled human and natural systems at the University of Maryland. And my fun fact is that I have lived in every region of the United States except the Southwest.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. First, I want to tell, I didn't coach them to say it was all due to Spring Garden, but I love those words. The one question I told them I wanted to lead with, because you two know me pretty well, but we're new to each other. I'm very much a heart person. And so what drew me to Spring Garden was the values the school helps impart, match the values in my family well. And so I wanted each of you to take a minute and just share what value or values, keep it succinct if you can, do you think are a direct takeaway from your experience here at Spring Garden? And I'll just let you popcorn, whoever wants to answer.
So I actually, in a former life, I was a teacher. And so when I was teaching, I just always went back to the amazing, fabulous, outstanding teachers that I had for all of my years of schooling, but especially in early childhood. So I taught preschool, and my preschool experience at Spring Garden was very different than the experience that the students I was teaching, but I loved that. I know that I have so many wonderful experiences in life just from that wonderful experience of preschool, of being able to explore and to learn and to party with my friends and to, have a beautiful snack and a really good rest. And so those are the sort of things and the sort of experiences I wanted my students to have when I was teaching. And so I think all of those things are so, so important. We all have to eat. We all have to make sure we're taking care of ourselves and that we're resting and that we have time to play and time to express ourselves and times to get together with friends and family and to know how to communicate in those sort of situations. And those are all the skills that Spring Garden taught me in preschool. And I use them every day. So it's been a good experience.
Thanks, April. Anybody else?
I would say the values that I most took away from my Spring Garden education was just to be a free thinker and not be afraid to follow your own path. I think that because you are allowed to go at your own pace and kind of have your own relationship with your education and your learning style, I think it showed me how to do that throughout life. And I think that's really shaped who I am as a person. And I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah, I would agree with everything that April and Aubrey have said. And I would just add that the community building aspects and like the relationship building, those are things that I use like every day. And I really attribute it to Waldorf education, because when you are a part of a small community, a close knit community, you really have to get along with everyone, and you have to really talk to everyone, and you meet people from all different walks of life. Whereas I think of like a bigger school, you tend to find your clique and find the people that are like-minded. But in Waldorf education, there isn't really that. I don't really remember that happening at all through my time at Spring Garden. So I think that is something that I really cherish and value.
I'll say that for me, this is a story I tell often, is that my mother was an Akron public school teacher, and that in her 30 years, I had attended one Akron public school, and I wasn't doing well. I was very distractible, very unmotivated. I would daydream, and this was probably second grade, and I was evaluated for ADHD. But when I was on the medication, my mother said, she caught me one day in the gym just shaking. I was sweating profusely, and she didn't like the effect the medication was having. Not only was the medication ineffective, I was also still falling behind and still needing a lot of support. They wanted to retain me for a grade, and my mother, knowing me, took me out of that school and took me to Spring Garden. And I haven't done poorly academically since. So much so I got my PhD. And so that is strongly attributed to my successes at Spring Garden. Now, mind you, I did get re-diagnosed for ADHD like the last year of my PhD, because dissertation is a whole other monster. So I got re-diagnosed with ADHD. But as far as neurodivergence and difference and diversity, Spring Garden was a place that accepted me regardless, and gave me the focused attention that I needed, the individualized support that I needed. Taught me to value myself. I remember crying with Miss Bouch, my teacher, for those 5-6 years, about how I couldn't get division, like crying. And she came over and she rubbed my back and just told me to try again. So that's what Spring Garden gave to me, is the implicit, intrinsic, inherent sense that you have value and you got this.
I hear so many things that everyone's saying that I'm like, yes, this is me too. Oh my goodness. But I think the most important thing I got was treating every single person that I met as a whole human being, like as a sacred whole human being, even if they were the biggest, rudest person. Like, I acknowledge their humanity, even if they're doing something very wrong or even terrible. But often just that helps me in any conflict. It helps me when I've moved around everywhere, become one with the community quickly. And like Ian was saying, that ability to build community, I think that comes from seeing everybody as an individual. And then I forget who said that there weren't really cliques. Ian, I think you kind of also talked about that too, but that lack of cliques is probably due to seeing everybody as a human being. I'm still friends with everybody from my class, and we couldn't be more different. I also taught preschool, April. So, and it was like my little mini Waldorf classroom as much as it could be. But as well as the treating people as whole human beings, I came in there so scared, unable to speak barely. I was born abroad, and I just remember when I was really little, I didn't talk at all. Now I talk a lot, and it's Spring Garden's fault that I'm so comfortable and confident being my weird self. And I was not thriving in public school. I was miserable. I wished that I didn't exist. Like every day, I hated going to school. I had no friends. I came to Waldorf school and I thrived. And I felt really confident. So I came from a school where I was pointed at like as the weirdo, to when I returned to the public school system, I was known for saying, let your freak flag fly, like be yourself. And I told everyone else, and I was like, I'm going to be my weird self, and I don't care what these people say about me. And I was strong and I was mighty, and I was a mighty weirdo. But it served me well in life, and I found lots of other fun, interesting people as a result, because they're like, that person is probably okay to be authentic around. So I guess Spring Garden taught me to value human beings, but also stand up and be myself, and which, yeah, yay.
Thank you, guys. So I'm so grateful, one, for the power of Zoom that is allowing us to have conversations with people who aren't close by. And two, I'm going to have to shout out to social media, because what I can tell you is I've only ever met in my job, initially Ian and Aubrey as students here when I was very new at the school. And then through the power of social media, stumbled on Baron and April and Lauren, and have had really wonderful interactions that I've benefited from personally, and I hope you have too, but also in great support of the school as well. And what I love is, you know, I think when people think about alumni, you think about your high school alum being attached to their high school. You know, these are professionals out in the world who took time out of their day to come talk to their elementary school. That just says, that adds power. So I want to open it up to you all. This group of people has a variety of age students, all the way from preschool to 7th grade. So the questions are going to vary. If there's some dead space, I'll throw a question out there, but I'd really like them to be able to answer your questions. So go. Ellen's like, not me.
No, I can. My husband was just, he knows I'll talk always.
He knows you'll talk?
Yes,
Great.
I have that same affliction. Well, I guess my first question, so our story is we have 2 little kids and one's 3.5, and we're looking for preschool. So we're very new to like Waldorf. Neither of us went to a school like that. So I guess if putting yourself in our shoes, you know, what would be your advice to us? What should we be thinking about that's unique about Waldorf comparing like to other preschools? I guess that would be open-ended.
I don't have a.
Yeah, April and Lauren might be best able to speak to that one.
Oh yeah, sorry. I'll let them talk
Go
first.
ahead, Lauren.
All right, I'm going to call on April.
Oh yeah, I would say I really enjoyed the preschool experience. I do think, you know, this is just me as an educator.
Oh, there she goes. All right, passing the ball to you, Lauren.
She seems
Oh,
frozen.
no, she's frozen too. April's
All
coming
right.
back. Ian's going to jump in.
Wait, Aubrey, did you have something to say?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, I don't have a preschool age child or anything, so I don't know how like looking at different preschools has changed, but I would say very much my experience of Waldorf preschool that I was very grateful for is that, you know, they see the work of the child as play. And so it's very play-based and focused on that as your primary learning experience, instead of trying to make preschool a time for traditional academic learning. And I think for me as a child, I was a very kind of imaginative, dreamy, a little bit off in my own world kind of kid. And I think I really needed that play-based space to come into myself and develop my identity before getting into that more traditional academic environment where, you know, even in Waldorf, you are at a desk and things like that once you get into traditional elementary school grades. And so I think having that space to just play was really valuable, and something that if I were to have a child, I would definitely look for in a preschool.
And I would also chime in and say that sometimes you know, the world can be so competitive, and we always feel like we want to give our children the edge. but especially in preschool, sometimes children just need to have an opportunity to explore and to be creative. And those social skills are like so crucial. And you learn so many social skills that carry you throughout your life. And so, why I said part of the success that I've had in the world is because Spring Garden is because I have okay social skills and I know how to deal with lots of different people and lots of different environments. And that's all a part of the Spring Garden process for sure.
Thank you both.
I didn't go to preschool there, but I know a lot of Spring Garden graduates, and I can say the reason I would choose Waldorf for my kid, and I've been saying I wish we had Waldorf in Gettysburg. We don't have that here, but I know that children that go to Waldorf preschools and schools in general, but especially those, I have a kindergartner and a 4-year-old right now, and I wish I send them to Spring Garden. I love my job here. I love living here, but every now and then I look at jobs back in that area, like, oh, my kids could go to that school though. And I know it's such a good place for a kid.
Thank you.
Another question? I know you have one, Marion.
I do. So my son is in 7th grade and we're looking at high school right now, and he's most likely going to be attending a public high school without any of his classmates from here at the same school. And so I'm wondering advice or on 2 levels. One is like helping him make that transition, because that's a really big leap to high school, but also suggestions on staying connected with your Spring Garden community when you don't get to see them every day anymore.
I guess I'll jump in first. Yeah, the transition to high school can be tough. I went to Firestone High School, so a public school after Spring Garden. And I think only one of my classmates joined me. And yeah, it was a little difficult, definitely socially, a little bit academically as well. But I think what really helped was finding my group of people through an activity. So I joined the marching band my first year. And that's kind of how I met people that became my friend group. I started doing other music things like being in the pit orchestra for musicals. I was in the symphonic band. So I really leaned into the music aspect. So I think that would be my advice to your student, is try to find something that they like doing, to meet people and to find sort of their niche in high school.
Hello. I only went to Spring Garden for 6th through 8th grade. I did have a little bit of a bumpy transition, but I really wanted my parents to move to a specific district so I could go to Firestone with all my cool friends from Spring Garden, because that's where everybody lived in Highland Square back in the day. It's like, Ian, you probably know, but so everybody was going to Firestone. I wanted to go there. Or some people went to Hoban. I went to Our Lady of the Elms with one of my classmates, but then she transferred. Her dad got transferred to another state. So my freshman year, I went to Our Lady of the Elms, but that ended up being a long commute, and I spent a lot of time with the nuns afterwards while I waited for my dad to get off work. So I transferred to public school, and actually, I mean, I got all my math education up through trigonometry already at Spring Garden, and I said I didn't learn much at public school except for, I found all the misfits and got to do a lot of community building. So finding your people is important. I joined or formed or whatever a punk rock band. I'm still friends with those people today. And I got involved in theater, and I started finding my own people. I learned to go from an environment that was very welcoming to who I was to one that was less so, and how to be myself and be comfortable with people who weren't always comfortable with who I was. But it was a transition, but I think you really want to make sure your kid is getting an opportunity to have a say in where they're going. And if they say, I know this is where I need to go, they probably know. It's, you know.
Yeah, I think as far as staying in touch with your classmates, so I actually had a different kind of experience in that my family moved after 8th grade to a place where there was a Waldorf high school. So I actually ended up going to a Waldorf high school. But of course, I was in a totally different state than all of my classmates I had had at Spring Garden. And so I think one of the things that helped me is my parents reminding me that my friends back home like probably wanted to hear from me and like would want to hear about this experience I had, or like reach out to them when I was having a bad day or something, because I think, you know, when you're a teenager, it's really easy to like get caught up in what's happening in your day-to-day life and even be a little bit self-absorbed. And so I think just having that reminder of, hey, like, remember this person who you used to talk to every day? They probably still want to talk to you. And that definitely like helped me maintain those relationships until I got more into the flow of doing it on my own.
So you guys have talked a little bit about like the social difficulties transitioning from this school into like a more traditional like public school. Can you talk about, you know, how it was academically for you? I think Ian, you had kind of started to mention that.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of struggled my first year from what I remember. And I don't know if it was really like my grades suffered or more of just I didn't feel as comfortable as I did at Spring Garden. But after I found something that I was passionate about, I really leaned into that. So I got really passionate about science and biology, and I took like the AP test and got a 5 on it, which actually propelled me to getting a full ride to Allegheny College on a National Science Foundation scholarship. So I like really loved science. So I think that helped, that I found what I was interested in pretty early on in my high school career, and that's kind of what I focused on and what I really enjoyed.
So my experience is I left Spring Garden in 8th grade. And then I went to CBCA. And so that was Cuyahoga Valley Christian Academy. And so that was a big change because it was super academic and very competitive for grades, which I had no idea about. But I did okay. And I think that first year was just definitely like learning the process of how to get an A and how to get a B and what it all meant and all those sort of things. And then after that with high school, I did okay, but I really wasn't that great of a student. And I think it's just because I really wasn't into the grading system, but I still had okay grades. But then when I went to college, I did really well. I went to the University of Akron, and all my professors were like, oh, you're such a great writer. You're really great in this skill set. And I really attribute that to the rigor of Spring Garden and like your teachers not playing any games where you had to get the work done. You had to do your best. And if you were fudging it, they knew. And so by the time I went to college, I was already just trained to do my very best. And you know, that same training is the same training that, you know, you use for life when you're going out into the workplace, or, you know, you're making new relationships. You want to put your best foot forward and you want to do your best and to show kindness to others.
And I think for me, following Spring Garden, I wasn't motivated by grades or GPA, but I didn't struggle academically. I think I liked ideas more than GPA. I think things that like, you know, byproduct of ADHD and neurodivergence is the hyperfixation on things that actually like make you passionate. So I kind of followed on into that kind of trek. Like beyond motivation for money, beyond motivation for GPA, like what do I actually enjoy doing? And so I didn't struggle academically, but it wasn't my main motivator. So I'll say that.
Okay, I'll ask another question. So one of the things that really has drawn me to the Waldorf idea of education is like the integration with nature and time outdoors. And I'm just wondering if you guys could talk about like how has that shaped your like adult life, and did you value that part of the experience, or just more about like the outdoor nature aspect?
Yeah, I mean, I think that really shaped my life. I'm still an environmental scientist because of it, I would say. And I think, well, I grew up in a family that valued that, so I may have had some of that. I think Spring Garden really gave it to me in a way that my family couldn't, because having that nature play and time outside like every day, rain or shine, like you have to have this full rain gear suit for a 5-year-old because like they're gonna be out playing in the mud, experiencing all types of weather. I think that really gives you a bond and with the natural world and an understanding of it that you don't get just from playing in your backyard on a nice day. And so I am really grateful for that. I think in terms of like who I am as a person in my career, I'm still a big like backpacker, hiker, rock climber. So it's really shaped my hobbies. And then of course, I'm an environmental scientist. And so I think it really shaped my interest in how I observe and see the world around me, which is very much framed by nature and how we interact with it as people. So that's something that I think is an invaluable part of the experience that really has the potential to have an immeasurable impact on a child.
I think all the creek walks I went on with Edmund Knighton, we're working on our physical fitness, but at the same time, we were exploring the world and getting muddy. Like I remember being in like mud at the bottom of the creek and then up to our knees and our waist and like water. And we did a nature camp somewhere. I've been trying to figure out what this house is we stayed at. I can follow up on that later, but there's like some nature preserve we'd stay at for like 6th grade camp or something. And just all the things we did like that really led me to becoming a park ranger. It led me, and I accidentally became a park ranger. I was teaching preschool in a national park. I mean, there was a lot of work, but we use nature in everything we do in our family. My kids are so tied in with it. I'm currently scratching myself a lot because I've been removing invasives from a garden grown with all kinds of invasives for 10 years in my 1882's house that I bought here. Yeah, I mean, we get all our local produce. We know we have a relationship with the plants, and my children have this relationship with the environment. I understand, I've done a lot of field biology and field science and things like that in my career at different points. And it's because of Spring Garden. Yes, my family took me camping a lot. That is a very important thing. But the holistic attitude towards how we treat our planet and everything is just the foundation of who I am and how I was able to move forward in my life and career and how I interact with the world around me. It's just very, like somebody said, the farmer's market is like my sacred institution, and they're not wrong. It's like, and I have like shelves of books on like foraging and farming, and thanks, Spring Garden.
Another question from the audience? Thank you. Thank you.
I mean, I guess I could ask the difficult one, which is like, is there a downside or, something that if you could have changed it about Waldorf education you would have?
Well, I think that, I love Waldorf education. I do think that, I think that, diversity and people of color, it's always a conversation we have to have, and we have to be honest about it. When I went to Spring Garden, I had a fabulous, amazing time. And I didn't have any negative experiences. All this sort of racial awakening that I experienced was more of a high school phenomena. But I think that it's always great to have diversity. Our school in the past, we had diversity, and I think that they really were ahead of the curve on that. And I think when you go to Spring Garden now, there is diversity, and I think that's really, really important for people to have different experiences, and to interact and relate in that way. I think that's really important. So I think that's just the downside of it's a private school, and they can only take so many students, and so that's just part and parcel of schooling in general. But I don't think that it was a downside, but I think that it's great that they're honoring diversity and encouraging it, and really thinking about it deeply. I think that's important.
Yeah, I think the main downside that I can think of, I definitely want to echo and amplify what April was saying about diversity being something that you do have to think actively about. And anytime you have a private education environment where you have tuition costs and things like that, that's going to affect the accessibility of that resource. And so I think that's certainly something to think about. And I think the one thing that is potentially a challenge, but I also see as a growth opportunity, is the smallness of the community. Ian talked a little bit about the upsides of this earlier, but I think it is a community where you are around the same people every day, and that can be a wonderful thing, and it can also really be a challenging thing. So I think you do have to learn to navigate a diversity of situations with different types of people, and so it gives you a lot of really important tools. But it can also be hard, and I don't want to negate how hard knowing that if you're not getting along with your classmates right now, there is no one else to get along with can be. But I think while that's certainly something to think about, it's also something that teaches you how to navigate situations that might not be ideal for you, and eventually you will find your niche, you will learn how to make those friendships. So it's also a positive.
I know Lauren said that she learned a lot of math when she was at Spring Garden. I'm sorry, Lauren, but my memory is that I was very far behind in math. At least in my mind, I wasn't that far behind. But when I got to high school, I was taking algebra, where all my peers were taking geometry. So I was a class behind them. And then when I got to college, I was taking pre-calculus, where all my peers were taking calculus. So I was still a class behind. So I just always felt like I was a step behind my peers. And then also going into a science field that felt more of a big deal than maybe it does to other students. But I think that is one downside. And I don't know that it's something. Yeah, I don't know. I think that is one downside, is I did feel behind in math throughout my academic career.
So I'd like to jump in there, just not to say that Ian's old, but that we were hearing that as an experience from some of our students, that they're going into their freshman year taking Algebra 1, and other kids are coming in starting in geometry. And that does matter in high school, because if you start in Algebra 1, it limits how far you can go in high school, whereas if you start in geometry, you can go farther. So we evaluated the math curriculum since that time, and now the students complete an Algebra 1 course by the end of 8th grade. Now, they don't get high school credit for it, but they can test into geometry if they're ready. And so it depends completely on the student. We have students next year going to high school that we're saying, no, they should do Algebra 1 again. They need more. Or yes, they're ready. They should try to get into geometry. So it still definitely depends on the student, but that's a space where we saw a need and we've made some changes.
I will also say, as someone who is still in a STEM field, I had similar feelings to Ian, a feeling like I might have been a little bit behind in math. I will say it hasn't mattered. I was able to catch up, at the end of high school and in early college, and I'm right there now in like biological modeling with the people that I work with. So it doesn't matter in the long run.
That's so funny because I came in at 6th grade and I was behind all my peers, but they were like the OG, like original Waldorf, Spring Garden kids from when the school started. And they were all so ahead. And me and Jennifer, who came from public school, were like the dummies that had a different math book. Like we had the 6th grade math book in 6th grade. And the other kids are in this other, like, we're like, oh, we'll never catch up with them. And so we did, but it wasn't anything for credit or nobody gave us info on testing it anything in high school, but we had done algebra, geometry, and calculus by the time I was in 8th grade. And the only new subject in my high school was trigonometry, which I never got because it was football out of the book, but bless his heart. So I had like a totally different experience, and I was not a math person, but now I'm in a math job. Oddly enough, I was like an artist. I was like, definitely did not pay attention and like.
Baron, do you have something you want to add?
Sorry, I can't tell if I was frozen or not, but I'll say similarly that I think I was behind my peers in algebra, but it wasn't significant because that was something where I just didn't have interest. So when I didn't do well, I was like, well, that's okay. And so I'll say the thing that I would probably change is that my mother was an Akron public school teacher. And so her being able to afford Spring Garden was a challenge. And there was a privilege I had in being able to attend, but I knew many Black boys who grew up in the city of Akron who didn't have that same opportunity. There's an incredible diversity of experiences. Like I made a piñata, like a little Black boy making a piñata, like that was something that is incredibly unique. And I feel very proud of my alma mater and my experience. And I wish so many other students could have all of these experiences, these annual events, and camping trips, and everything we've said that has benefited us as alumni could benefit so many other students. I just wish more could experience that.
Hannah? Talk loud.
I would like to kind of know your experience if you had the same teacher throughout the whole time. What were the pros, and did you see any cons to having this teacher the whole time?
So I had Jennifer for my first years, and then she left with Mr. Knightley, and they moved to California. So our teachers got married, and then we had Mrs. Woodard for the rest of the time. I think we had a teacher in between, but no one remembers her. It's only Mrs. Woodard. And, and I loved it. Oh my gosh, I loved it. I mean, it was like the best experience ever. It was like your mother, your aunt, and your grandmother all in one. And like, I was never bad. And I've gotten a little, but at Spring Garden, I was like, oh, I would never. Like if she had to call my mother, oh my goodness. And so she's still like, you know, a role model and like part of my family, and my classmates were all like family. And so it was the most wonderful thing ever. I think it's great because your teacher knows you really well, and she knows what your best is. And she knows if you're not giving your best. And she knows if you're having a bad day. So much of teaching and being part of a community is not always saying like, oh, I'm having a bad day. I need you to be extra nice to me. When you have the same teacher, she already immediately can look at you like your mother can look at you and say, you've been up to something, something's not right, and address it and move on. And I think it's wonderful.
Yeah, I'll echo April. I don't really see any downsides to having the same teacher. I think there's only pros. And I think April touched on all of them. Mainly for me, it's they really get to know you and you really get to know them, and you build that relationship over the 8 years or how many years you're there. And it's really invaluable.
Yeah, and I think as April was saying, that teacher is really an important person and mentor in your life. My teacher that I had first through 8th grade has actually passed away. And I'm actually tearing up now thinking about it because she was so wonderful and important to me.
Yeah, I think what everyone's touching on strongly relate to Spring Garden. Actually gave me an alumni award a few years back, and my teacher was able to attend. So I was very honored and blessed to have the person who brought me to that point and to this point here. One of many people um, to have her there was really meaningful to me. And so we've all been uniquely impacted by the effect of having a long-term connected teacher in a small connected classroom.
Can I ask, can you remember a time when you didn't feel connected?
Even when you do bad, you're still connected. Like even when you're feeling lost, there's still a handout to help you. I think if I ever felt disconnected, it was because I was a child reacting as a child does. Um, for me, I was very isolated and alone, and I did things on my own, and I just kind of did it. I was an only child, and so Spring Garden allowed me to connect where I think in any other environment, I would have fell deeper into isolation. And part of that actually happened in high school, where despite the fact that I went to a private school, I became effectively like a number. And so left to my own devices without that strong connection. Um, Socially, I didn't really go anywhere. Like I didn't do much. I didn't like diverse experiences improves neurodiversity and your neuronal connections. And Spring Garden does that. Whereas when you get into larger systems that don't kind of inform those experiences, it can become like we see it in studies with infants that the more restrictive stimuli or environment is, the less neurodiversity, meaning the less neuronal synapses and connections, meaning that their brains are literally lighter. Um, Diverse experiences are the way that we improve our thinking and our ability, so the communication, the socializing, not just the rigorous academic standards. Those are the things that improve us and improve our connections and improve our neuronal connection. So I guess that's what I would say.
All right, we have about 5 minutes left, so I'm going to ask if there's a burning question that someone hasn't been able to ask yet.
I mean, I guess I'm wondering, it seems like a very specific, like shared experience that you guys all have, whether or not you knew each other uh, in school, you seem to all have a lot in common and identify a lot with the same experiences that you had here. So I'm wondering, like, do you notice a difference in yourself as opposed to your colleagues at work or out in the community? Do you see your fellow alumni doing taking on certain careers later on in life versus others? I guess just to get a last 5-minute impact on your overall quality of life, how this has shaped your trajectory.
Pete, I want to clarify your question. You're asking their experience and how it's shaped them to be who they are in comparison to people they met who did not have this experience. That's what you're asking.
Yeah.
I think that one thing that I would say is that, so I'm in the sustainability field. And so in sustainability, people really love to kind of make it just one little area, like farming or food or the environment or climate. But what I loved about Spring Garden is that it really taught me, and I think my classmates, about how everything is so deeply interconnected, right? So one problem leads into another problem, into another problem, into another problem. And it also taught me that there's nothing new under the sun, right? So that comes from my own Christian faith, but it also comes from me studying the ancient civilizations, right? And so all of that learning has helped me to really be a deep and critical thinker, and to know that there are connections that people may not instinctively think about at the first time. So one thing that I could say is I'm working with Dillard University in New Orleans, which is going to be amazing. And we're going to work with the Fed, the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta, on some initiatives. And so most people don't always think of like environment, farmers, economics, and then an institution like Dillard. But I knew that there's a great connection there. There's so much synergy and there's so much great work that's going to be done for that area, for New Orleans, for Louisiana, for our country. It's really exciting stuff. And I totally attribute that to my fabulous, amazing teachers, especially Miss Woodard and Spring Garden, because they were the ones who taught me the power of connection and how everything is connected.
Yeah, I think April just did a really perfect job articulating, well, there is no pattern to fields Waldorf grads go into or anything like that. If there is something that sets them apart, that's it. The ability to think in interconnected ways and find those patterns and connections that might not be obvious to how we usually see the world.
And I'm really honored to be with this group and to respond to your question. You took a random sampling of Spring Garden alumni and put them on a panel, and all of us happen to be educators in various fields. All of us have been educators in sciences, environment, psychology, student affairs. We're all connected in that way.
I wrote down on my moving box. So when April was talking, that the thing that sets me apart from my colleagues is my extraordinarily big but doable ideas. They're not like, if we're going to change this one thing, we can also do this, and this is how it impacts all these other things. And it's like ping, 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 like a ping pong game of things we could do and actually affect change. And I've been told I'm like a change maker, and I guess the cool thing is I always set myself a place at the table. I don't wait to be invited. I share my ideas and I make them tell me no. And that's totally a Spring Garden thing. And I just feel so honored to be on this panel with all these people, which I knew who Ian was when he was a baby. I knew April. I didn't know everyone else, but all of you feel like siblings to me in a way, or cousins, maybe Waldorf cousins. There's this shared experience and this understanding. And I'm very appreciative of my education, a true education, not just academic, but how to use my mind and how to study, how to take notes. How do I learn? I just got so much from Spring Garden. So thank you for the opportunity. And I hope many more kids get the opportunity.
Anybody else want to share?
I think on like a smaller level, in my everyday life, I find that I don't put as much value into material things. And I think that is very much a Waldorf thing. I am more concerned about having experiences and being out in nature like we often were at Spring Garden. And that's not always the case with my peers. I mean, I don't think it's uniquely Spring Garden, but I think it definitely helped that we went to Spring Garden. The other thing is I feel like with my peers, I'm not really afraid of new experiences or moving away, which I think is really telling because none of us live in Ohio anymore. So we've all spread our seeds and we've moved on and we've explored the world, or at least the US. So I think that is also telling. I know a lot of my friends in high school kind of stayed where they grew up. And even friends in college, they went back home and they're still there. And I guess I just never settled for one location.
Yeah. I will say additionally, I blame your mother, Ian. I have been buying power tools and equipment to work with my hands. I didn't know why I wanted to work with my hands. It's been like 20 years. I've had this craving just to work with my hands. I blame this with Spring Garden because I feel like that was such a heavy element where I'm like, okay, that's Ian's mom talking to me.
Yep.
That's why I just spent $200 on power tools. As soon as I bought a house, I just immediately started buying power tools so I could just work with my hands. And I'm a psychologist. I didn't know why. This meeting has reminded me where that's coming from. Completely forgot.
I really want to thank all of you for taking the time to talk to us. I can't tell you things like this. Like, I'm obviously a firm believer in Waldorf education, but every chance I get to talk with the alumni, and it's especially meaningful to talk to adults who are out in the world, who are in a different place, than speaking with a high school student. It's just so reaffirming for me as a parent. And I think for us as a school to see, I'm standing in the back and I'm looking at you all, and you're all strong, intelligent, comfortable, kind, warm human beings, and so grateful. So thank you all. I sent you an email. Please send me your address if I don't have it, because I'd like to send you a quick thank you. I'm going to let you all sign off now while I say goodbye to our friends who are here. And thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. It was so good to see you all and meet you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. It's so good to meet so many classmates from other years.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.